Welcome, everybody. Why don't we start like we always do at Providence Catholic with prayer? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, thank you as always for your presence in our lives. Send the Holy Spirit. Give us the wisdom and guidance we need to help our young people as parents and certainly as educators. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Frank Palmisani. I am one of the college counselors. Many of you know Kyle Murphy, another college counselor, and the person that makes it all work, Laura Brazel, our administrative assistant in counseling. I also want to thank one of our parents, Dave Ripp, who is here and has been kind enough to film the event. And we're really excited about the fact that so many of you came in person, because now we know we also have the capacity to watch this on film. So what we're going to do is kind of twofold. I am going to give you the overview, the same overview that we gave your sons and daughters a week or so ago. And then at the end of that presentation, Mr. Murphy's going to come in and also do what we did with your sons and daughters, and that take you through what does an application look like, what does the common application look like, and then how does that information all transfer over to Naviance, which is the system we use that's so important in the transmission of information. So what our goal tonight, and we'll follow the information from the PowerPoint, is we're going to try to go through every way, every element of the procedures that are used in the application phase. You know, a simple way that I like to look at it is we're really trying to teach your sons and daughters how to put their best foot forward when they're actually applying to colleges. So let's start by reviewing something you probably remember maybe from last year. And that is, this is all based on a timeline. And so when we talk to students about where they're at currently, we don't want them to get ahead of themselves. We don't want you to get ahead of yourself. It's too early to start going into the decision phase, thinking that what you should be doing is deciding on a college. What we're simply doing now is continuing to explore, research, investigate, examine those schools that are going to be right for you, and then move yourself into this second phase, which is obviously the application phase. We'll get to the decision phase. We'll work with your sons and daughters on that, but that's clearly a second semester activity. You know, we're talking about the months of February, March, April, leading up to a May 1 decision. What we want to do is really learn as much as we can about how to get our best foot forward and really go through this application phase. If you recall, everything is built around 3 parameters. And this is really important when we do get to decision, right? We want to eventually find the schools that are right, fit academically, have the programs we're looking for, where we can be academically successful. Places where we know the student will be comfortable, atmosphere's right, location's right, weekend experience is right, and then obviously it's got to work for the family financially, right? That's how we get to this final choice. All right, let's go through some of the things that are really important as we move through exploration into application. We still have this wonderful opportunity now, an opportunity that students last year did not have, where college representatives are back visiting Providence in person. And so what I'm going to suggest, Mr. Murphy later is going to show you where all of that information is located, where you can actually see this dynamic list that changes usually every week of the colleges that are coming in to visit your sons and daughters. What you might think of doing is actually sitting with your son or daughter, going through that list maybe every couple weeks, and then assessing, you know, pick out 4 schools, pick out 5 schools, whatever. Pick out a number of places that you think your child might have interest in and encourage them to sign up. They would sign up with Mrs. Brazel and be able to get a pass so that they can see that college representative when that person does come to visit. You know, when we talk about these rep visits, we like to speak to our kids about what the purpose of those visits are. So it's not just learning about the institution, which is clearly one of the purposes, right? I come in and I sit in on the presentation of St. Louis University because I want to learn more about St. Louis University, and the rep is going to make a presentation. But in some ways, it's also a part of the application process, because what you're trying to do is communicate a little bit about yourself to the rep. That's what we do with applications, so why not do that in person? In a lot of circumstances, these reps are going to be the individuals reading the application. And so you would want to look the person right in the eye. We used to shake their hand. We don't shake hands anymore necessarily. Introduce yourself and be ready, be prepared. Know a little bit about the school, but more importantly, maybe be ready with some questions. These are the types of things we're telling the students. Almost look at the opportunity to visit with a rep as if it was a job interview. They're not job interviews, but what great training it can be if they take advantage of that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the different types of applications. And again, you're going to see this later with Mr. Murphy. The simplest way to apply is by going to the college website and finding that they have an online application right on their website. Usually, this is predominantly requests for demographic information. Sometimes an essay can be included, but it is nowhere near as comprehensive as a more elaborate application, which is commonly referred to as the Common App. I know many of you are familiar with this. You probably have started Common App accounts. So advantages and disadvantages of each. So the advantage of doing just the online application is it's quicker, cleaner. You can get through the application in a much faster time frame. The advantage of doing the Common App is that you can apply to multiple places with one application. So usually this is the kind of the MO you operate under. If you had 8 schools you were applying to, and 4 of those schools said the only way we will take your application is through the Common App, it would make sense, if you could, to do all of your schools through the Common App, right? Because then theoretically, it would be a one-step process with a little bit of variety in there that Mr. Murphy will explain. But sometimes you get kind of entrapped, because sometimes you have some schools that only will accept their online application and won't accept the Common App. So it is something that you have to check out. But the key is you always start with the college website. Go to the admissions page or somewhere where it says apply now, and that's where you're checking what type of application will they accept. One that they have right directly on their website or through the Common App. All right, so this is something that sometimes confuses our students, and I had a conversation with a student just a week ago about this particular item. Please know that the colleges are going to push you to apply early. So what does applying early mean? There is a timeline for early, and the timeline for early is now, the beginning of a school year, up until about November 1. That's usually the deadline for what we would consider all of the early applications. So there is really no advantage for someone to get out an application on September 3rd versus October 10th, as long as they're in that general milieu of between now and November 1. Now, there's a few schools that might throw in October 15th in there, but normally it's November 1. They call it many different things. Early action, encouraging to apply early. They'll put different names to it. But the point of the matter is, that's generally where we would like most of our students to apply in this timeline, which what the colleges call early. However, there is only one binding commitment program, and that binding commitment program is called early decision. The early decision program means that you are going to commit to that institution if that university accepts you. The parent has to sign off, the student has to sign off, and the counselor has to sign off, everyone understanding the contractual agreement you are making with that school and every other university that has an early decision agreement. So it's very, very unlikely that a student or a parent, a family would choose that. Now, the reason some families do it is because there's a sense that you might have an edge. So all my life, I wanted to go to Northwestern. Northwestern has an early decision program. I'm willing to say as a family, if we get accepted at Northwestern, we're going there. I might not get the money I want, but if they say yes, we're committing. This is very unusual for a family to give up that kind of leverage, right? But it can be the case in some circumstances. You just need to know what you're getting into if indeed you choose an early decision agreement. Not very common. All right, let's talk a little bit about this diagram and how this represents kind of a wheel of how everything revolves around the initial aspect, and that's the application itself. That's where you start. You don't start on your Naviance account. That's good for research and eventually sending stuff. We'll talk about that. But you start with the actual application itself when we get to the application phase. So you're looking for this application, again, through Common App or through an application online. Now, if you look over to immediately to the right, you'll see something called self-report. Now, what that means is there are a few applications, and actually there's a growing number of schools that are doing this, where they're saying you report your own courses and report your own grades on the application. So what we told our students is if a school has a self-reporting system, you get a transcript from us. They can get a transcript from Mr. Murphy, from myself, from Mrs. Brazel. It's an unofficial transcript that they take home. They actually fill that application out and they transcribe from the transcript the courses and the grades that they had. University of Illinois wants a self-reporting system. Illinois State does, Iowa State does, a number of other places. Now, here's the catch. The catch really is they trust the student, but they verify. So in the end, when the final transcripts are sent, that we're required to send, if there's a mistake, they can pull that acceptance. The point is, we've told our students, that's why you don't go by memory. You don't just think that you got an A in a class. You actually go to that transcript, look at the grade, and put it exactly as it exists on the transcript. So there's no errors. Now, that is going to be uncommon, however, in a sense that what most institutions are going to want is for us to send the transcript. And so we're going to show you, Mr. Murphy's going to show you how students request transcripts from us. But please know, parents, this is after the application is transmitted. So if we were to transmit a transcript prior to the file being established at the college, they haven't even gotten the application, that transcript will just sit there. Now, maybe it'll eventually be matched, but it just makes more sense if we start with the application going out, and then obviously the school wants the transcript, so they request the transcript. We transmit it literally when they request it the next day, typically the next day, and then it gets transmitted. Now, please understand this as well. There's always a timing gap. So systems, college systems work this way. You apply to Marquette University. Marquette University system now has a file with the student's name on it. Immediately, they're going to transmit an email to that student saying, here are the things we need to complete your file. So what will happen is student X comes in and says, we need a transcript sent, or sends us an email saying send a transcript, or requests it through Naviance, which Mr. Murphy will show you. We do it, and then 3 days later they come in and said they never got it. Well, they got it, but you understand that that's how their system works. They're automatically going to inform the student. So normally what we encourage people to do is give it about a week, 10 days. And if you notice that the file is incomplete, Because in most cases, what will happen is the colleges have an opportunity where once you establish an account, you can check on the status of your application. If the file's not complete, then come back and tell us, and we'll send it again to make sure that it's been received. We have this capacity in Navient to actually see the submission and the date, which Mr. Murphy is also going to show you as well. So normally it's going to go, it's going to work, it always does, but sometimes there's just a timing glitch. All right, so that's the process of the transcripts. Now, I'm sure by now, if you've heard one thing about the college arena as parents of seniors, you've heard about this. And that is, because of COVID, the idea that everybody had to send a test score in has changed, right? It used to be that along with the transcript, you had to submit a test score, ACT usually, sometimes SAT. That clearly has changed. Almost everyone, can't say everyone, but almost everyone today is test optional. Now, this is a tremendous benefit for students and parents because you literally get to decide. So we are not putting any test scores on transcripts. You know the test score. You can share the test score with us, certainly, if you want our advice. But you as a family will decide what test score goes to what college or if the test score goes at all, right? So the obvious question gets, well, when is a score good enough to send? And I will be honest with you, there's no universal answer here. So a 26 might be great for 90% of institutions, and you might want to send that. But if you were applying to a highly selective who predominantly looks at 32, 33s and higher, I wouldn't want to send the 26 if I still had stellar grades. So, you know, this is where you would maybe bounce that question off of us based on the schools to get our sense of whether it's smart in that particular test situation, in that particular student situation, to indeed include the test score. Obtaining the test will come from the testing agency, and we'll show you that link a little later. All right, now, what else could be included? So for most schools, that's going to be it. For some, they'll want letters of recommendation, counselor letter and or teacher letter. So we're going to get into some of those specifics as we move forward. All right, so how do we request the transcript? So I apply to an institution. After I've applied, I go to my Navient screen, the student's Navient screen. I'll add the college in, and I will right there request the transcript, and we'll get that notice. So we have a transcript file. We come in the beginning of a day, or look at it at home or someplace and see the following students yesterday asked for transcripts, okay? So it's an easy system for us to track. Now, there's always a fail-safe. And the fail-safe is, in addition to that, shoot the counselor an email. Say, just applied to Grand Valley, send my transcript. There's nothing wrong with that. We love that. It doesn't bother us because you're giving us an email we don't need. That's fine. Another fail-safe is walk into our office and check. I'll do it right in front of you. That's fine too. So, you know, everything we've told our kids is we're your advocates, we're your helpers, use us as a resource, Mr. Murphy and I, but this is how the system will work, and it's very easy. You just request the transcript right on Navient itself, okay? All right, if you are going to use test scores, now you do know, families, that in the application, the student oftentimes has to designate, I'm going to submit without the test score, or I'm going to include. Now, there are some institutions, some universities, that will allow you to even submit without, but then later, if you take one, I know a lot of students might be taking September as an example, and you really like your September score, send it anyway. So nobody typically holds it against students when scores come in later. But in any regard, if you're going to obtain it and you have your cheat sheet in front of you, which I'm hoping you all take home and use as notes for yourself, it gives you on that cheat sheet what is on the screen, and that is the website you go to order tests, test scores directly from the testing agency to particular colleges. So we've talked a lot about superscoring in the past. I'm sure you're all familiar with the idea. So what we explain to students is that if you examine multiple tests and somewhere in there is a potential for a higher superscore, you are not deciding that. The university is deciding whether they're going to use that or not. But the only way they can consider it is if you send them both scores. So if I have a 24 and a 23 composite, but the line item where I had the 23, I had a higher math score, I want to send both. I don't want to just send the 24 because the higher math score gives an opportunity for the university, if they choose, to superscore, right? So the only way they can do it is not by you saying, do this for me, but simply sending them the multiple tests that allow for the superscore. All right, a counselor letter of recommendation. This is the easiest thing to obtain from Mr. Murphy, who works with students A through L, or for me, who work with students M through Z. And we have done so many of these over the years. Mr. Murphy, not as many as me, because as you know, you can see he's just a year or two younger than I am. But anyway, that was supposed to get a higher, bigger laugh than that, for crying out loud. But anyway, so, but in any regard, all the student has to do to get a letter of recommendation from us is obviously the school needs it. You know, to get one when the school doesn't want one or doesn't require one, it doesn't have any benefit, there's really no need. But if the university needs a counselor letter, then all the student needs to do is give us something. Now, what we say is give us a resume, but it doesn't have to be a perfect professional-looking resume. I mean, it's great if they take the time to do that, but the point of the idea of the resume for us is we're going to try to create the best picture of this student as we possibly can. That's what we're doing in the letter of recommendation, right? And actually, I will tell you that the universities don't even call these letters of recommendation. They call them written evaluations. They want a written evaluation of the student from the counselor. But our kind of perspective is we're trying to, capture the best information to provide the best possible, putting the best foot forward for the student. So to do that, we want to make sure that we include what the student wants us to include. In other words, we can see the transcript, we can see the grades from the transcript, but we want to make sure that if the student has spent time and energy and effort in an activity, we know that. If the student has spent time and energy and effort in a volunteerism program, we want to know that. If they've spent time and energy and effort working, we want to know that. If they've received an honor, we want to know that, right? So you get the idea, the picture of a resume. And so there are resume builders on Naviance. They can use that. They can Google, and we told them this, you can Google creating a college resume and use some sort of a format that way. Or you can simply take out a sheet of paper and write these things out and give it to us. No matter how we get it, we're going to take it and then move on that and get the letter done. The letter of recommendation that we write, the written evaluation, goes into the Naviance system for that student. You will not see it, and the student will not see it. Now, the reason why you won't see our letter and you won't see any teacher letters is a relationship that we have with the universities. You're going to see something on a lot of individual applications now, and certainly on the Common App. And the question you're going to be asked, the student is going to be asked, is do you waive your right to review your letters of recommendation? You say yes. If you don't say yes, they don't trust the letters. It's like it doesn't do you any good to say, no, I don't waive my right. They just simply won't trust them. They will feel that you created undue influence on the writer, and therefore they won't honor it. So ultimately, you say yes, knowing that we're going to do the best job we possibly can to create the best picture that we possibly can for our students that ask us for these letters, okay? All right. The teacher letter does not require a resume. It simply requires a very short form. So the student would fill out a form, very short, answer a few questions, give it to the teacher, and ask the teacher if they'd be kind enough to write a letter of recommendation on their behalf. That again will go into their Naviance account. It'll not be sent to the student. It'll not be given to the student. Normally, they'll just upload it to their Naviance account. Now, here's where the timing is a little different. For us, we can whip these out pretty quickly, right? Counselors. But the teacher is teaching classes. They're grading papers. They're organizing assignments. So you have to give them at least 2 weeks. You know, it is just very frustrating for a teacher, especially when we get close to November 1. You know, the student procrastinates, they get close to November 1. Now all of a sudden on October 28th, they're going to apply to an institution with a November 1 deadline, and it requires a teacher letter. And so they give it to a teacher and say, I got to have my letter by tomorrow. That's really not fair to any teacher. So you've got to give them at least 2 weeks to be able to, first off, they have to say, yeah, I can do it for you. Yes, I'd be happy to. And then you've got to give it enough time. So that's a part of the organizational responsibility that your sons and daughters have to take on, okay, in relationship to that. All right, if your son or daughter is an athlete and they are very interested in participating in athletics in college at the NCAA Division I or II level or at the NAIA level, there is another step. And that step is they have to go to the NCAA Eligibility Center, establish a file, or the NAIA Eligibility Center, establish a file, and then tell us they did that. Now, I've already, Mr. Murphy and I are seeing our seniors one-on-one. And we've been doing this now since school started, after we did the presentation to them in the classroom. And so we're whittling through the entire class. And already I've had a couple of our students, my students, tell me, oh yeah, they're interested in athletics, they went to NCAA, they established a file, and then I said, all right, well, we're going to send the transcript. So then when we went to send the transcript, they had never gone they never had established a file. So they do have to do that step. So if you're the parent of someone who wants to play college athletics, at least get that first step done, and that is establish a file with NCAA or NAI and or both. Okay, so, the money aspects of all of this is so important that we have a special night for that. I'm going to go through dates in a bit here, but obviously money aspects are always important. So to try to do justice to money today would not be appropriate. I need an hour to do justice to the money issues. So we have another night for that, and I encourage you to come. But I do want to give you an advance warning. And the advance warning is we have a major shift in the financial aid delivery system. And it's coming in 2 years, but it will impact all of you. The reason is because the process is a year-to-year process. And so you'll learn something that will be effective for you going into freshman year, but then by the time the student is a junior and senior, rules are going to change. What you don't want to do is get caught up in thinking, I'm going to be paying X amount of money at this institution, and I, in my own mind, think it's a 4-year plan, and then you find out, they pulled the rug out from under us once junior year hit. So I'm going to be talking about that in detail when we get into our money talk, which I'll give you that date, okay? But generally, a part of the pursuit of money is scholarships that come from colleges and or scholarships that come from independent agencies, right? The scholarships that come from colleges, the first segment of that, not all of it in totality, but the first segment typically comes immediately after the student's been accepted. So I apply to St. Ambrose University in Davenport, Iowa, and not only do they send me a letter of acceptance, but they tell me they're offering me $12,000 or 15 grand or 18 grand or what have you, right? So that part typically comes automatically with the admissions, with the acceptance. There's a second phase to scholarships I'll talk about in detail on that Monday night. But the first phase is that. The pursuit of independent scholarships from agencies, that typically is a second semester topic, okay? That's where we get into how you do that effectively, and I'll get into that in great detail on the night for the money talk, okay? All right. Students visiting campuses. So we have colleges coming here to visit, and then, of course, there's this opportunity that we encourage families to get out and visit colleges. Now, you might want to think about Columbus Day. You might want to think about weekends. You might want to think about a day off that the college won't have a day off. Those are great. But in addition to that, the Providence is willing to provide 2 unexcused college days. Excused college days. So that if you just notify us, the student notifies us saying, I'm going to Butler next Thursday, we'll let the deans know. You just go ahead and call in that day saying you're at Butler. But the important thing is they get a sheet from Mrs. Brazel. And all it is a little sign-off. So when you're at Butler, somebody from the admissions team or somebody at Butler signs off that you were there, and then you bring it back to us or to the deans, and then you're clear. So that's the 2 excused absences to take a college day. And by the way, if you need more, you're just going to call the student out anyway, right? I mean, you'll make your own judgment as a parent on that. Okay, important date. So the money talk is September 28th. I'm hoping that is that in the, I don't know if that's in the cheat sheet or not, so you might have to write that down. But we'll certainly get to you, right? We'll get that information to you in advance, just like we did for this program, Conquering College Costs. And then there is a fair on October 13th. Now, this is the only fair in our area. And last year, it didn't happen because of COVID. So, you might want to take advantage of this. It's at Joliet Junior College, 200 college reps there in one night, all positioned around the community college. They'll give you a map when you get in as to where people are at. But what I would encourage you to do, because we'll get the information out in advance, who's going to be there, don't go in there with no plan. You don't want to go in and then say, okay, now who should we talk to? You'll just be walking around aimlessly, just picking up flyers. Have an idea. I'm going to really spend some time with these 5 schools today. I want to make sure we get a contact, or 10 schools, whatever it is. But try to go in with some sort of a plan to take advantage of that particular night. All right? I'm going to move to my colleague, Mr. Murphy, who's now going to do the real important part, and that's the technology aspect. And then we'll come back in and answer general questions after that.
Thank you. Just to kind of show the age difference between us, I don't know if everyone knew this, but Mr. Palmisani actually still writes his letters on a typewriter, if you could believe that. So you hear him just clucking away in there when you go in his office. It takes him forever. But thank you. So what I want to do is take you through what this process is going to look like from start to finish. So what I mean by that is I want to take you through what a typical online application will look like. And I'm going to take you through what the Common App will look like. And I understand that, everyone in this room might be in a different spot. Some of you have older children who have gone through this, so you have an idea. Some may have already started the application process. But I think it's important that you kind of recognize what this will look like from the student's end, where they're submitting the application, all the way to our end when we're submitting transcripts and letters of rec and things like that, all the supplemental materials that come with it. So I'm going to use Lewis University as our example. So what a student would do is, if they're interested in applying to Lewis, they're going to simply go to Lewis's website. You can Google Lewis application, and you'll notice when I do that, I come up across freshman undergraduate application. I have 2 choices. I have the Lewis application, and I have the Common application. So you're going to find this with many schools. and it's becoming more and more popular. More and more schools are subscribing to the Common App. So you a lot of times will have a choice. So the student will have a choice with which one they want to apply to. Now, that's not to say that some schools out there will only have one choice. Some might only say, you have to do our online application. We don't subscribe to the Common App. I get that mistake all the time. At least once a year, I'll have a student come into me, say, I completed the Common App. I'm applying to the school, but I can't find the school on Common App. And they'll tell me the name of the school. And I'll say, well, that school's not on Common App. You just did that application for nothing. And Common App can be quite extensive. So we always tell students, make sure you're looking ahead, understand what that college needs, what they require, so you're not just doing things. Never assume anything in this college process. And that's what makes it tricky. Everyone's a little bit different. All right, it's not one shoe fits all. So let's go ahead and look at the Lewis application just to see what that would look like. I think the hardest thing you'll have to do is create the password. They had like all these stipulations on it. It took me forever. Okay, so what an application would look like. Let me just get to the actual application itself. Here it is. Here's Lewis's application. Pretty straightforward. It's going to ask for demographic information and things like that, your academic history, information about the school you go to. And a lot of times, some of the questions that they'll ask, students might not know the answers to. Like a popular one might be, what's your graduating class size? So we ask students, don't just make up a number. Come and ask us. It's we're going with 208. I know it fluctuates a little bit at the beginning of the year, but 208 for this graduating class. But students will just like make up a number, like, I put 300. No, it's not even close to that. So make sure you come and ask us for questions that they might not know the answer to. The other one that tricks students a little bit is the grading scale. So sometimes they'll ask, what grading scale are you on? It's a 4.0, okay? And I know that the GPAs, weighted and even sometimes unweighted, are above 4.0, okay? We are still on a 4.0 scale. So some students will put on, well, I have a 4.5, so I'm putting a 5 scale. No, it's not, okay? It's a 4.0 scale. All right. So you get the idea. Academic history, test scores, extracurricular activities. So some colleges will allow the student to upload a resume. So many students have already completed a resume. They've done it for, maybe if they need a letter of recommendation from us. If you've done that, you have it there, and they have the ability to upload it, go ahead and upload it. That's great. Personal statement. This is something that a lot of students will come across, and they always ask me, like, do I have to do that? It's like, well, do you want to get into the school? I don't know what to tell you. Here's what I'd say. Not all students, first of all, not all schools are going to require a personal statement. A lot of them are optional. It depends on the student and the school. So if the student if they're above the admission criteria, if they're a really strong student and they could basically look at it and say, I'm going to be admitted to the school, they're pretty confident about it, okay, maybe you don't have to do the optional personal statement. Because if you're just a shoo-in, they're probably not going to read it anyways, right? But if you're on the bubble or you're on the edge or you're not sure, it's always a good idea. And that's the student's opportunity to explain why that school is important to them, maybe what they want to study, a little bit about their background. It's kind of an open slate. They can tell them a little bit about themselves. The other thing that it allows students to do is if there was a situation that occurred or an issue, maybe there was a family issue, maybe there was a death in the family, all right, that really, their first semester, sophomore year, they really struggled through it. Well, their grades might see that in a transcript, like, well, what happened your sophomore year? That's a time for that student to explain, hey, here's why my grades suffered at that point. So make sure students are kind of, we try to tell them understand that, but if you're coming across that, make sure they understand that that could be an opportunity for them to kind of explain the situation. That would be a standard online application. Not a whole lot to it. A lot of times you might be able to complete it 20, 30 minutes. It's done. Very straightforward. A lot of the smaller traditional private schools, have really quick online applications, okay? So if we go back and I decide that, well, I'm already applying to other Common App schools, I'm going to go ahead and do the Common Application for Lewis. So I have to establish a Common App account. And again, you're only doing this once, all right? So let me log in here. So this is what the Common App is going to look like, all right? Now, the Common App is the actual application. You do that part once. So if you're applying to 10, 15 schools through Common App, you only do that part once. But then each school that is part of the Common App that you're applying to has a supplemental section, and I will show you what that looks like. So let's start with the Common App. This is where students are going to begin. This is the actual application. The green check marks are good. That means the student has completed that section. So I just did a couple as an example. Profile, you go through, do the information, you start getting these green check marks. That means that section is complete. So a lot of times students are saying, I can't submit my application. And I'll go back through and say, oh, you're missing the demographics. You didn't have a green check mark. So if it's not able to submit, you go back through, make sure you got all the green check marks. Family background, education, right? Testing, okay? If you've taken a test, activities they're involved in, all right, that's important. And then you come across the writing component, okay? So the Common App requires one essay, all right? The Common App itself requires one essay, and the student gets to choose from these prompts. Now, you're submitting that same essay to all 5, 6, 8, 10 schools you're applying to through Common App. What's really great is all our seniors had the opportunity to write an essay. Now, they might have chosen one of the Common Apps. They might have chosen an essay from another college application they were looking at. But they all had the opportunity to write one in their English class this year, submit it, and then they got feedback. And if this is the first time you're hearing about it, then uh-oh. You might want to talk to your son or daughter then, right? But then they got feedback on that essay. So I always tell students, they're like, well, can you look over my essay? I have no problem looking over the essay. What I'll look for is content, grammatical stuff. I tell them, go to the English teacher. But content, like I had a student in my office the other day, we fixed a few things. Hey, you might want to expand on this a little bit. What are the colleges looking for? So that's great that our English department does it. It is great feedback. And whether or not they use that essay, it's up to them, but they had that opportunity, okay? So once you submit that essay, again, let's assume I had green check marks all the way down. You'll get to a portion where it's courses and grades. And now this is the where you're self-reporting information, okay? So some schools require it, some schools don't. As you can see, Purdue is one of those schools that does require it on the Common App, all right? So when students are doing this, we tell them, email us, stop in, get a copy. We'll give you an unofficial copy of your transcript so you can just literally copy your transcript over to the system, all right? Because they'll come back and say, well, I can't remember what the name of that class was. Just stop in, see us, make sure you're recording it correctly, okay? So I get my green check marks. I've now completed the Common App. Now, I'm not done yet, though. So up at the top, I go to My Colleges. This is where you can add colleges to your list. So as of right now, okay, I have 5 colleges on this list. So if I were to go to Loyola, okay, Loyola has additional questions they want to know. So when I check that, here's, start term, academics, what are you looking to study? Okay, some other information that Loyola wants for themselves. The writing component, okay. If you look at a school like Notre Dame, with it being highly selective, okay, they're going to have a little bit more information they're asking for, certainly. Their writing section, they have a required essay, all right, on top of the Common App essay that you wrote. Okay, so some kids think, oh, I wrote my one Common App essay, I'm done. Well, no, not necessarily. Some other schools will have additional essays specific to that college. Okay, but most don't. Most don't. It's typically the highly selectives. All right. So there's some of Notre Dame's questions. Let you ponder that. What would you fight for? That's it. That's what you get. All right. So the dashboard, that's where you can go back and see, all right, which one was submitted, what was not submitted. It's just a way to track your progress. Sorry, going back real quick. Let's take Loyola, for example. Something that is really easy, but sometimes holds up applications for our students is this waiving, Mr. Palmisani talked about, waiving your right to read letters of recommendation, right? The FERPA waiver. So under the college section, there's a section after the questions called Recommenders and FERPA. You only have to do this once. So if I had 20 schools in my Common App, if I do this once, I'm done. It'll give me a green check mark for all 20 schools, all right? But sometimes students forget to do it. It's very simple. Complete release authorization. Check the box. Yep. I waive my right. Check another box. Yada, yada. I get the green check mark. Now you can see if I go to Miami, Ohio, I got it. Purdue, I got it, and so forth. I'm going to show you when I go to Naviance. That is a step that the students have to complete in order for us to be able to send transcripts to the colleges through the Naviance system. And I'll show you where that's going to link up when I get to Naviance. Okay? So that's basically it. Other information that you might find helpful on Common App, if you were to go to like Purdue here, if you scroll down, they'll have information about the application fee, okay? Standardized test policy, is it required? Is it optional? Essays, letters of recommendation, okay? Does Purdue require letters of recommendation? No, they don't. They'll take a letter, all right, but they don't need one. So a lot of information you find on the website, but you can also find directly on here as well, okay? All right. So that's it for the applications. So as a student, I've now completed these. So last night, I submitted my application to Lewis University, right? And I did it through, let's say, Common App. What do I have to do next? Now I have to go to my Naviance account. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my Naviance account. And if students have issues logging in, they can stop and see us. So this is what the Naviance account looks like. This is Charlie Celtic's Naviance account. All right. So I've submitted the application. I need to request the transcript. Here's what I'm going to do. Go to colleges I'm applying to. Okay, I've already added some schools in here, as you can see. I go up to the top right here, hit the add button, addition sign. What colleges are you applying to? I'm going to say Lewis. Oh, of course I already had them on my list. Hold on. I want to use them as an example, so let me do this. That won't let me. All right, I'll add another school. University of South Alabama. There we go. All right. So the application type, this is where you indicate, are you applying early action, regular decision? In all honesty, we're not paying attention to this on Naviance. This is more for the student just knowing what the deadline is. It doesn't matter what they put in here. Here is the important part, though. So as you saw on Lewis's application on their website, they had two options, the direct and the Common App. The student must indicate correctly which way they applied. This is another big holdup, especially when the parent does the application and then it doesn't get reported right. And I asked the student, they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, better ask your parent then how they applied. So how did you submit it? And the reason why this matters is because it changes in the system how we send the transcript. So if it's reported incorrectly, we might send the transcript to the school. But if you did Common App, but you said directly through the institution, we'll send it directly to the institution, but it's not going to link up, and the college is still going to be looking for that transcript. And we're going to have no way of knowing unless you report it correctly. So that's why we say other than just putting in Naviance, we tell a student, stop in and see us, shoot us an email, just something that, hey, I applied. And then usually we'll follow up with, okay, this is, you applied Common App and so forth. All right. So I've submitted I'm going to say I applied via Common App. I've submitted my application, add and request transcript, initial transcript. And if I want to add more colleges, I can add them in here. Request and finish. Done. Pretty easy, right? Pretty easy. So here is a great tracking system on the student's end and on your end. So you could see under where it says transcripts. If it says requested, they did it correctly. They requested the transcript. It got to our end. It came to us. If it says no request, they didn't do it correctly. Okay, maybe they just added the school to the list, but maybe they didn't submit it yet. But if it says, you always want to look for, is it requested? Okay. Office materials. This is how you know if it was sent or not. So if it says pending, as in the case with South Alabama, that means we have not sent the transcript. If it says initial material submitted, that means the transcript did in fact go out to the college. So again, it's a way for you to track at home. If you see any issues, like I said, contact us. Maybe there's miscommunication on the student's part. All right, something happened, but we just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. Okay? Yes. Yep. I'm getting there, all right? No. So up at the top, there is a red bar, okay? So this red bar, this is for students who utilize the Common App. This is the last step. So this goes back to that FERPA waiver I was talking about. In order for us to send transcripts through Naviance to Common App schools, the two systems have to link up. They have to talk to each other. Really simple to do, but students just have to do it. Here's what they have to do. You hit match account. You type in your email password. It brings up another screen. You hit yes, and it's linked. And then what they're going to get is this red bar will disappear. They'll get a green box like this. It'll be linked up, and they're done. And now we can send a transcript. So it's one last little step that they have to do. Sometimes they forget. Sometimes it holds up their application or us sending of transcripts. All right, but it's just a reminder that they can do that. Now, everything I just explained, I have sent out, or we talked to the students about it in the classroom. I also put together a screencast that basically recaps what I just did through the Naviance system and how to get those transcripts sent. It's really easy. It's just a matter of following the steps. Okay? All right. Something else I want to show you on Naviance. So when we're back on the home screen, we talked about college rep visits. So we have a slew of colleges that are coming. They're starting right after Labor Day, and you can find them under colleges, college visits, and here's a list of all the colleges that are currently signed up to come to Providence. There's quite a few, right? Going all the way into the end of October. What we tell students is, please check this list at least once a week, or maybe you get on them a little bit and say, hey, can I check the college visit list this week? Make a habit of it, because there's always colleges contacting us, hey, can we get in? And we'll just keep adding them to the list as they come. Now, last year, the college rep visits were virtual for the most part. Now, the majority of them, I would say 98 to 99% of them are going to be in person. They're going to be in our College and Career Center. There's a few that are doing Zoom meetings, all right, but by and large, they're going to be in our College Career Center. So, again, it's an opportunity for students to meet with that rep, the person who a lot of times is reading their application, get in front of them, put their best foot forward, and get ready for the application season. Okay. I think that's about it as it relates to the Naviance software, as it relates to Common App and applying to schools. I hope that process makes sense. It might seem overwhelming, but once students kind of dip their foot in and get the process started, it's really not that bad. What I always tell students is, don't try not to procrastinate. Work on it a little bit. You don't have to sit down and do an application in one day, right? You could work on 10, 15 minutes here, come back in a couple days, do it again, look it over. Don't try to tackle it all at once at the end of October. Just pick away, even if they're not ready to submit the application. For a lot of students, a lot of the seniors are looking to take that September 11th ACT here at Providence. So I've talked to a lot of students who said, well, I want to wait for that test score to come in before I apply, because I want to decide after that test score if I'm going to use test optional or not. That's fine. If you want to wait, that test score comes in by the end of September, then they make that decision. But what I was telling them is, well, don't wait till the test score comes in to start the process. You could be working on it now, basically have everything done. The test score comes in, and now you say, well, now I'm going test optional, I don't want to use it, or yes, I'm going to use it, submit. Okay, so just like I said, pick away at it. Use us as a resource. We're here to help you along the way, and try to enjoy the process as much as you can.
So the fail-safe system is always the same, and it's always been for year after year after year. That's why all those pictures are on the wall. It works. Use us. Students use us. Students pop in. I'm in a little bit of a different situation from Mr. Murphy in that I will be in the building about half the time during the week and working from home half the time, which means if parents need to get a hold of me at night, if parents need to get a hold of me on weekends, email me. I can make connections with you. We can do Teams meetings. So we've got flexible scheduling opportunities to make sure that in addition to being able to be around for your kids when they need them, when they need us, we can be available to you. Okay, so that's another opportunity that you can certainly take advantage of. One other point I want to make before we get into questions, and that is, you always get this question, well, how many applications should a student use, or how many schools should they apply to? Think of it this way. The more choices you have in the process, right, the more that kitchen table gets filled in January and February with not only acceptances but financial awards, the more flexibility you're going to have and the more potential you're going to make the right decision. So, 2 is probably too few, right? 10 might be fine, or 8 might be fine. 12 might be okay too. I mean, the point is there's not an exact number, but to think that a student is going to be able to, oh my gosh, I'm only going to apply to one school and then it's going to work for me, probably not the best idea. Questions? Anyone? Yes. They don't submit the letter of recommendation. So we're transmitting it. It's in the Navient system, and as the application is completed and they tell us they need the transcript, if there's that material is in there, then and the school needs it, we'll transmit it. So we're doing the transmission. I will also say this, because the perfect way is the student applies and everything's loaded in the Navient, so then the transcript goes with letters. Oftentimes, the timing doesn't work that way, right? Because the teacher just hasn't gotten that letter in yet, right? So ultimately, it's okay that the application goes out, the transcript goes out, and then a week later, the teacher letter comes in, and then that gets transmitted. That's fine, because that file, if the teacher letter of recommendation is required by the institution, they won't complete the file and respond to the student with an acceptance or rejection until they get all the material. So sometimes it ends up going piecemeal. That's not the perfect way. We'd love for it all to go out in one swoop, but sometimes it's just not practical that it can happen that way.
Just brings up another point about letters of rec. So if a student gets one letter of recommendation, which is typically the most they'd ever need, the teacher's going to write a general letter. So they could send that same letter to 5, 6, 7 different colleges. Some students think that, I need 4 different colleges need a letter of rec, so I get 4 different letters of rec. No, teachers are going to write a general letter to the admission office, and you can send it out to all colleges. And we know what colleges need letters, what don't. So if we see, hey, they submitted the application, there's no letter in here, hey, we'll talk to the student, have you requested a letter from a teacher yet? That's something I've been kind of hounding my seniors on a little bit. Some who have been, I don't want to say dragging their feet because it's still early, but are like, oh, I'm just, thinking about things and really not ready to apply yet. I said, that's fine. You don't have to be ready to apply, but look to see if you need letters of rec. If you need a letter of rec, that might be something you can do now, so it's done by the time, end of September rolls around. When you're ready to apply, it's already sitting in your file. And now we're not waiting for that letter to come in. It's getting close to the deadline. Kind of get a move on some of that stuff. But like I said, most students probably won't need a letter. Just depends on the colleges they're looking at. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Some of them are asking for letters of recommendation, not for admission, but for scholarship applications, so we can go ahead and do those now.
So if they don't need a letter of recommendation, certainly, yeah, you could do it now. You could have it submitted, especially if it's like an easy online application. Some of the smaller traditional privates that are going to offer or throw a bunch of money at our kids. Yeah, a lot of those don't need letters of recommendation. Yeah, easy application, get it submitted. Oh. Yeah, yes, yeah. Yeah, great question. The question was regarding, for example, a November 1 early action deadline. Does that mean just the application has to be in by November 1, or do all materials have to be in? Does the application have to be complete and closed? The answer is yes, all materials have to be there by November 1. So it's not just the application submitted, but the transcript's there. If you're sending a test score, that's there. If they require a letter of recommendation, that is there. They want all that stuff by that deadline. Yeah.
So that's a great question. I'd like to follow up on something in relationship to that. Indiana University is an absolute stickler on their merit scholarship. If test score is needed, wanted, desired, and the student is going to do it, if they don't get it by November 1, they're going to knock off the possibility of merit scholarship. So you make a great point, and that is when we say November 1, we're really talking about getting that thing moving quite a bit before that so that materials can get there. And we can't control how long it takes ACT to move that test from their operation to the institution. And you hate for families to lose out on those kind of options because they didn't notify ACT early enough. So I would say, first, second week of October, if you're sending test scores and you've got November 1 deadlines, you're going to want to get that information out there. So really good question. The question is, if I don't submit the test score, might it impact merit? Thank you for asking. So last year, of course, that was the biggest question that we asked institutions, right? Because that was the first year everybody's going through COVID, and then they're establishing this test optional. Invariably, what universities told us is we will not harm the student. So basically what they have done, most of them, is they've created two matrices. Here's a matrix of a GPA that is going to be based on a student who does not send us a test score, and then establish the merit scholarship from that. And then another one when a student does, and establish the merit scholarship from that. What they told us was that the student who doesn't send the test score will not be harmed. Now, there might be some institutions this year, universities this year, who say, we can give you a bump if a test score is included. We can improve it by 1,000 or 2,000. That's where you should try to establish a relationship with an admissions person at these places that the student's going to apply and start asking those types of questions. Because it's impossible to know over the landscape of all universities how that's going to be viewed. So once you get into, okay, we're going to apply to these 8 schools, this is where your email chain goes out, and you're starting to ask questions via email like that so that you can know at this particular institution, this is how they're going to view that. Yes?
On the nav runs, you can see the pending and where you can see that you sent it out. Is it then the common app where we get the confirmation that the school has got the 5 things they need? Like where, because I know that if you use the university site, it will tell you that we are still waiting for this, this, and this. If you use the common app, is that school page going to show us we've got everything we need, we're still waiting for this one thing?
Yeah, so you can always, so when the student applies to a school, whether it's through the school's application or through Common App, they're going to establish an account with that school. The school is going to send them an email with account information. And however they applied, you're able to track through that account what the school has, the transcript, oh, we need a letter of rec, that's in, file is complete, they'll get their, a check mark or whatever it is. Now, that's where Mr. Palmisani made mention of the delay, where a lot of students will come in and say, I submitted my application, I requested a transcript, I know you sent them, but it's not saying they're there. And I'll look back and I'll say, well, we just sent the transcript 2 days ago. They take, some colleges will take like 2 weeks to update their systems. So kids get in a panic. So when in doubt, you can always just contact the admissions office. If you know, hey, I really want to know the deadline's coming up, do they have everything they need? Contact the admissions office. Or I always tell a student, come see me, I'll call the admissions. All right, make sure they have everything that they need. Because a lot of times those systems do take a little bit to update. Yeah.
I have a question related to the system of the merit application. With our school not doing class rank, how does that affect that?
So most high schools are not ranking students anymore. It's, for especially here, a lot of our students are really top level, really good students. So students who might have pretty good GPAs and do pretty well in the classroom could potentially be in the lower half of the class. So that gives no benefit to our students overall. There's always a box when students are applying or when we're filling out a form. They might ask for class rank, but there's always a box. We do not rank. And like I said, the majority of colleges or high schools are not ranking anymore, just because it's just not that big of a benefit to all the students.
There's so many things that are going on in your minds, right? I mean, wow, all of what you heard tonight, and you can imagine that same thing is happening with students. We're going to handhold them. We're going to get them through all of this. It's not uncommon for one individual student to see myself or Mr. Murphy 15, 20 times during their senior year. That's not uncommon at all. Happens all the time. We'll tell kids, you do something on a college-related one night, come and see us the next day. It might be a 10-second conversation. It could be a 30-second conversation. We're just going to want to know what you've been doing. So, you just encourage them. Whenever they have a question, you have a question, we're here for you. Yes?
Students still getting support and coaching to help them with the major that they want?
Sure. So the question is, could a student get support in establishing things like a major? And another reason why a student might want to see us is just that. If they're undecided about what they might want to pursue, we might encourage them based on questions that we would ask them. So, yeah, certainly. We hope we could be helpful in a number of areas. Mr. Murphy's a lot more helpful than me, but we try. Okay, good?
All right. Thanks for coming out. Make sure you grab your hand or keep your handout with you. Sign your seat. Make sure you bring that. And that handout, the PowerPoint we just went over, that was all emailed to your son or daughter back when we did our presentation. So they have it all. It might be in their deleted file, but it's in there.
And there's going to be a video on this presentation available too. So if you want to watch it again,